Good morning. My name is Judy Billings. I'm the detective here at Stanley Police Department. And so that means I'm an investigator. My job is to collect information. So my goal is when I start an investigation is to answer the questions of who, what, where, when, and how something occurred, a crime occurred. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we use math, science, and technology in investigations to accomplish that goal. Okay? So as law enforcement officers, we use math every day. As people, we use math every day. We have very simple math things that we do every day, but for us in law enforcement, it can be as simple as us taking a tape measure, measuring a crime scene. It could be us showing a scale on the photograph. Like when we take a photograph, we put a scale down to show, the scale of something. Or it could be just putting evidence in sequential order. Putting things in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, as we collect them. We can also do blood stain pattern analysis. So you have to take measurements. This is the type of blood spatter here. So we would have to take measurements, and then based on the measurement of what we're looking at, that we can determine the type of impact it was, and determine the distance from the impact of the victim to the spot where the blood is on the wall or on the floor. And then we can also determine if the victim was moved or if the crime scene was changed in any way. So the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is a little bit more of what I do every day. So we're going to talk a little bit about science, okay? So science is something that we use every day also, and it's really important that we know scientific methods and the way things are done. Because if we don't, we can really mess up identifying a piece of evidence, or we can mess up the collection of evidence. And the lab can also mess up analyzing that evidence. So it's very important that we know scientific methods and how we collect things, okay? So every time we touch something, it leaves something behind. So we transfer. So I'm going to demonstrate that with this piece of tape. So if I touch this piece of packing tape, my fingerprints are going to be on there. You probably can't really see that, but my fingerprints are on there, right? So I've transferred not only my fingerprints, but I've transferred DNA. The other thing that happens is when my clothing rubs up against something, it's going to leave fibers and things behind. So this is something, or hair. So see, I got a hair on there also, right? If you can see that. But it's going to leave these white fibers on there. So we know that evidence is transferred every time something is touched. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of evidence that we can collect at a crime scene and what the analysis of that will tell us, okay? So first we're going to talk about biological evidence. That's these things here. So we're typically talking about body fluids or hair or something like that. Something that comes from your body. It's a biological thing. So we're going to talk about blood. So, right, what can we get from blood? We can get DNA, right? We can get blood type. We can also get we have body fluids, usually that's saliva or some other type of body fluid, some other type of mucus secretion that the body does. We can also do DNA type about that, right? The other thing that people really don't think about are insects. We can get DNA from insects. You know why? We can do that because every time there's a death, we have certain insects that show up to attack that body because it's food to them or it's a host for them to raise their young. So this type of fly, we call this a bottle fly because it's green. It looks like a green glass bottle. You don't really see those much anymore, but we used to see them all the time. And this fly will show up at a death scene, usually within about an hour. And the reason it does that is because it's going to feed, but the biggest reason it does that is because it uses that dead body as a host. That's not only for people, but that's for animals also. So what can happen with this is, like, if we can't identify somebody, we can take the larva. You can take the larva from this insect that's growing in that body. You can use it to determine time of death based on the stage the larva is in. They can also take this larva and grind it up into a soup, for lack of a better term, and extract the DNA from it. To tell us, we can get DNA from that body based on that. And we can use that DNA to identify somebody. We take a known standard, what we call a known standard. So for a victim, that would be, we draw blood at the autopsy. so we are able to type their DNA. For a suspect, if we can identify a suspect, then we have to get a known stamp from that, and that is either doing a blood draw or doing what we call a buccal swab. Okay, so that is taken, there's a process we have to do so we don't cross-contaminate, but it's all in this little kit. But basically, we take a swab and we brush it on the inside of their cheek to collect their DNA, and then it's sent off to the lab. If I put something that's wet in this plastic bag, what's going to happen to it? It's going to decompose, it's going to rot, it's going to be really gross.